Cool. So we are recording. This is our future leadership call, and I think this is call 5. It might be call 4. It could be call 6. I don't keep that much of a track. It's the next call after the last one. So thank you everyone for joining us. As ever, we will keep these incredibly open, and ultimately we're going to keep them led by all of us. Like, I'm not here purveying any information. There's certain topics I want to bring up to discuss because I think they need discussing. And I specifically on this call wanted to bring up some of the more, I don't actually like, I've said tinfoil quite a few times, and I'm going to talk about like not saying that soon. And even the word conspiracy brings up a lot of, like we're self-perpetuating a particular narrative. However, they are the most accepted. So they're the sort of things I wanted to bring up on this call, just so that we can have a space to start to talk about them. It is really important that we keep open minds. It's really important that we can do our best, each of us, to just remain calm. And that is whether someone might be bringing up something that triggers you. One of you might love Trump. One of you might hate him. Someone else might think China's amazing. Someone else might think not. Someone else might think all conspiracies are just poppycock and we're all stupid. Everyone's views are always welcome. The whole point is that we can discuss them. Because one of the things which I found really interesting that I loved, and Daniel Smachtenberger referenced it, Ollie, you might have seen it in the Sensemaking 4 documentary that I shared last night. And he just shared how like so many things that were conspiracies from the 40s, 50s, 60s are all true now. And they're true because they're released when people die, 50 years after people die or something like that. Classified documents can come through. And so much of the stuff that was, you would have been deemed a kook to have said in the 40s, 50s and 60s is now proved to be completely true. And so history shows us that what people think of at the time as being crazy and would never be true, as the decades pass, proves to be completely true. And so history has a tendency of repeating itself. I definitely want to begin by just making sure that after this call, whatever comes up, everyone has the space to just have a few minutes. Alexander, if you're leaving at 8:30, I really want to make sure that you're leaving. Calm is the wrong word. What word am I looking for? Stable enough. Just because if we are talking about stuff, and this is saying for every single person, I'm just referencing Alexander because he's leaving earlier, because I want to make sure at the end everyone's leaving at least with some rounded positivity. The point of this call is not to inject fear into everybody at all. We're talking about some pretty chunky subjects, and stuff can come up. Same for anyone that might watch this call afterwards. So, so it's just really good to just make sure that we're cool with that. We all receive information at different levels. We have people on this call who have much more experience in life than us. Got people on this call who've got less experience in life than us. Doesn't make anybody deal with the information better. We all have the worlds that we live in, and some of this information can disrupt some of that. So I want to make sure that everyone's cool with that. And at any point, if someone's struggling with any information, to just compared to Rainbow, I want people to just be cool with it. That's all. So can I just check, because I'm using this microphone, can people hear me okay? Do I come through clear enough? Yeah, all right, super duper. Okay, so I think the good thing is I'm pretty confident everyone on this call has got some experience with some of this chunky stuff that we're talking about. Does anyone think that it's all brand new to them and they've got no idea about some of the more nefarious things that are occurring in the world? Does anyone?
I think there's I've been, you know, immersed in it in the last few weeks in particular in a way that I've never been before, which is quite interesting. I mean, I'd watched a whole load of things, you know, back at uni and you know, every now and again, not really kind of participating in a kind of active way. Though I did go to art college, so there was quite a lot of people that were very, very, very keen on this stuff. And I remember having quite fun and big chats with them about that, debates. But at the moment, it just feels, whether it's because I've now got myself involved in it, or whether it's the reality of this current climate, it just feels like it's gone it's just blown up. There's just stuff everywhere. New documentaries every single day, maybe 2 or 3, which are kind of, production quality kind of content put out there that have been released, and I would be interested to see whether that's something that's happened now, as in the last, 3 weeks, month, or whether that's just always the case and I've only just become aware of it because I'm now looking into it. But fairly familiar now, but wasn't only a few weeks ago.
Have you seen, Ollie, the Out of Shadows documentary now?
Yeah, I've seen the Fall of Cabal one. I've seen the one she does about the 10 episodes.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Which really, and then I've seen the one that she does about the COVID ones there. She's done 4 episodes now, which are really, really interesting as well.
Well, we're going to weave a few things, just some kind of thoughts on the top of my head as well. And Alexander, did you see the documentary for the Out of Shadows? No. Okay, that's cool. And Alexander, have you seen the Fall of the Cabal videos?
No.
Okay, cool. So it's potential that the content of that documentary, which we'll get onto, could just be quite heavy, but because I don't even know how we're going to broach that subject, but we'll get there with it. Alan, have you seen the Out of Shadows or Fall of the Cabal stuff?
Yeah, I saw Out of the Shadows a few days ago. A friend sent me the link. It's material that's very familiar to me. So It was, what I felt was it was presented in a way that was accessible to someone who's new to this material. So it was well worth her sending me that link. The Fall of the Cabal, I haven't seen, no.
Okay, well, the Fall of the Cabal, I would say, is it's a good 2-hour commitment. It's done in, I think it's done in 10 parts, I think, or 14 parts, I can't remember. And it's the same as Out of the Shadows, I would say, but far more in depth, with actual tangible links that you can follow whenever you want. Like the Out of Shadows is a bit more very well done documentary. The guy's got serious money. He's in films. He's going to make a good
Crypto Mike.
show. Did I hear Crypto Mike then?
Yeah.
I would be really surprised if Crypto Mike jumped on this now.
No,
So,
that was me. I was trying to find the Fall of the Cabal video. I didn't realize.
Okay.
Can I just chip in here?
Yeah.
Alexander, I would recommend you begin with Out of Shadows, because the Fall of the Cabal is quite intense watching.
Yeah.
So watch Out of the Shadows. Go on, Ollie.
And let's get to Mum, Elaine.
I've seen Out of the Shadows. Fascinating stuff. Is the Fall of the Cabal on YouTube as well?
Yeah.
Right. I shall be watching that later then.
I'll send you the links.
It is intense watching.
Just know.
I'll do it tomorrow morning then.
Yeah, like you do it tomorrow morning. It's the difference between me giving you a summary of an autopsy versus me doing an autopsy whilst wearing a body camera and having cameras at the end of my utensils. Like, it's pretty. The perspective is much more in depth.
And they've removed number 5, which is the 5th episode.
Yeah, so I mean, they removed number 5 when it first went up, because even the content of it breaks YouTube's guidelines.
Can I just something? Has anyone uploaded episode 5 to BitChute? Because most of what tends to get censored from YouTube seems to end up on BitChute, where it remains uncensored. So it might be worth looking there.
There's a few like that as well. There's Freedom Social, there's BitChute, and there's a few more. Because I'm actually waiting to see which one of those becomes the YouTube equivalent for uncensored videos. Because there's a few kind of vying for position at the minute. But BitChute is the one that comes up the most. Just quick hello as well
if you look
to
in the comments.
Richard. Hi, Richard.
Hello.
Hey, Richard.
You all right, guys?
All right.
Go on, Ollie.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, if you look in the comments, it references. If you look in the comments of either the 4 or 6, it references number 5, and you just click a link. I found it within a minute. It was really easy to find number 5. My recommendation would be to try and watch it all in one go. I know that sounds like quite a commitment, but I kind of I watched it the night before Julie, and then the next night I watched it with Julie, but about half more, and I was like, I can understand why, but I'd encourage you to try and watch it all the way to the end. And I think there's some kind of, it almost feels better having watched the whole thing in one go, rather than kind of watching it a little bit or here and there. And
especially because at the end, it does a good enough job of putting a different spin on everything to kind of say, look, I know it's bad, but ... here's some context to the bigger picture of it. And without that, it can be really hard hitting. So Richard, just to catch up really briefly, like obviously the purpose of this call is to discuss all sorts of stuff that is all linked ultimately with what's going on, because I don't think for a single second blockchain and crypto and finance and everything is unrelated to massive geopolitical affairs.
Same, yeah.
It's really important, especially because some of this stuff's really chunky. If you've never seen some of it, that at any single point people are cool with stuff. I don't want anyone leaving this call feeling shitty, basically, ultimately. And at the same time, we're going to weave in a lot of stuff around sense making, because the further down we go into any rabbit warren, you're automatically putting on various different tinfoil hats anyway, but at the same time, you have to start to have some rules or frameworks to just begin to try and make sense of it. So we're going to try and cover a bit of those things. We started with the Out of the Shadows documentary. I think, did you say you'd watched it?
Yeah, watched the whole thing, yeah.
Okay, cool. Was that new to you?
It was, but I think same sort of thing. It's you realise you've come across the same information from a different source at a different place. That's why I posted that thing about the Corey Feldman thing after, because he's been talking about it for years. But people kind of, just thought he's been a bit of a whack job with the whole thing, or he's sort of dealing with his own conspiracy theories. So if you just cross some of those things, and I've seen another thing as well. So you sort of cross-reference those things, you can create that Venn diagram in the middle, don't you, where it's just the things overlap and you just join the dots up. So
yeah, it's basically it's like it's an Ikigai model, isn't it? And it's like, this is what everyone says here. These are all the county court injunctions. These are all of the weird things from history, and here's something else. And then where they all overlap is arguably or potentially truth.
I didn't know about the whole Satanism thing that it really sort of pushed at the end. I wasn't aware of that. So that's a new one.
So some of the things then that I want to first cover off, I highly recommend all of you, and I will put them into a playlist to watch all of the War on Sense-Making videos. The last one Daniel Schmachtenberger did was the least quality of them all. They're all made by a company called Rebel Wisdom. The guy is an ex-journalist and got fed up of just all of the lies in journalism. So he made this Rebel Wisdom channel, which is honestly, like, I love it. Like, it's real. Yeah. It's absolutely brilliant. And that's how I found Daniel Schmachtenberger. And I am fortunate to have lunches with some really intelligent people, and that's how I found him. And he does this series. It's now become a multi-part thing called War on Sense Making, and it is the best thing I've ever seen to challenge your biases, to challenge how you see the world, what you agree to, what all sorts of stuff. And the last one he shared was all about conspiracies. And I thought, well, that's brilliant. And he shared a couple of things that I'd forgotten, or I knew, but I just don't think about. And it's two things. The one that he shared that I liked was that history shows us that what people think are conspiracies in the 40s, 50s, and 60s are now proved to be totally true. And if we look back at what we know from the early 1900s, 1800s, there's loads of things people thought were crazy, and then now we start at the time, and now we look at them and they're true. And these are things like what started the Vietnam War. It's now we know that wasn't an attack on a submarine, that was a completely false flag. That's been shown. Even the guy who, the general that apparently was the person that called that in, went on camera to even say that. It's been released in papers. And there's a few more that Smachtenberger called out, and a few others, that what was considered a conspiracy back then, that you would have been deemed crazy to believe, is completely true. So we know that history shows us this. Many of you will have experienced or done your own research to see just how warped the media is. And Daniel Smachtenberger, in his first War on Sense-Making film, shares how he did his own research on who owns all the newspapers, and you only have to go so far up to realize that it's a completely controlled narrative. And there's a brilliant video someone did once, filming all the different stations across the whole of America over the course of a month. And literally on the same day, at the same time, people read the same scripts, all these tiny little news stations. And it just goes to show, and this is the same all across the world, that there's an agenda within mainstream media as well. So you reach this stage where you start to question, where can I actually find truth of information? And with things like that out of the Shadows documentary, and so because there's only on here my mum and Alexander who haven't seen it.
No, I've seen it.
Oh, you have seen it more, haven't you? Yeah, of course. So Alexander hasn't. So Alexander, like, we've talked before when you've come round for dinners and things like that. We've had conversations around, like, you've inquired about, like, elite control of people, yeah, and general controlling of humanity at a level that we're not privy to, yeah. So it's of that ilk, in the same way that people would say they control Hollywood and pharmaceuticals and governments and things like that. However, what it's sharing and showing is a much darker side of it, which is, in essence, I'm just going to try and say it, an incredibly large child trafficking, sex trafficking, and paedophile ring, heavily linked to pretty much the top level of everything. Hollywood is massively involved in it, but we're talking senior levels from Hollywood. And if you start looking into the other documentary, you're including presidents, you're including basically all the people that are named on, what's the island? Is it Harvey Weinstein's island or Epstein? I always get them confused. So I don't know, Alexander, if you're aware of Epstein's Island. Have you heard that?
I've not heard of it, no, but I've heard of the concept that you're talking about. So,
okay, cool. So it's all linked, and it's all been coming out. And so Oliver shared earlier, like, he's only been getting into this in the past 2 months, and his question was, you know, has this all been coming out with all these really good information in the last few months, or is it just because you've been getting into it the last few months? And from my personal experience, and Christina, you comment if you think otherwise. So we've been aware of this stuff for a good number of years. And I would definitely say in the last 6 months to a year maximum, but 6 months specifically, the increase in conversations and this sort of topic, moving from no one really talking about it to a substantially greater number of people being aware of it, has been staggering. Absolutely staggering. Like, it really, really has. Now, I think a lot of that is linked to a few reasons. And I think this whole QAnon stuff is massively linked to it, because QAnon dropped a lot of things. Plus, on top of that, you look at the arrests that have happened. Now, if I'm not here to say whether Trump is good or bad or anything like that. I'm just going to report on some things that I've seen. So if you look at the number of child sex trafficking and paedophile arrests in America in the last 2 years, more arrests were done in the last year than the whole 9 years that preceded it. So if you think about a compound curve that goes up, so more arrests in 1 year than all 9 years that preceded it, and the year before there were more arrests than all 9 years preceding it. And it literally is like with a compound curve, like nothing ever happens, and then it just goes bump like that. All the years when Obama was in, basically, like, they just kind of plateaued. There was never any arrest. And from the moment Trump came in, they have jumped and jumped and jumped. And the narrative that goes along with that is that part of the remit for him coming in is to break up and fix, get rid of, and destroy a few things, one of which is this massive child paedophile ring. And it's really, I think it's that big, or it would appear it's that big, that it's really difficult to get your head around. And what Richard was on about with the satanic stuff is that there is a chemical released in the human body when you're under extreme fear. It's called adrenochrome. And they have patents on this, and you can buy adrenochrome. If any of you have Googled it, you can find the patents for it. The company that manufactures adrenochrome is in Wuhan, which is interesting. Yeah, it's not, I don't know if it's the same place where that, where it kind of all got leaked, but the company that manufactures adrenochrome, I've done my own research on this, is based in Wuhan. And I think you could probably link, I'm trying to think of a film that would kind of, imagine like an elixir of life. You drink it and you regress in age and everything you could imagine. Like, just imagine you're watching a Hollywood film and you drink something, but they extract it from children under extreme fear. And it just sounds so crazy and so bonkers. But when you start looking into some of the links and some of the ties, and the fact that at this senior level around the world, so many of them are linked with massive cases of sexual assault, of pedophilia. And there's even, and this is the thing that really shocks me the most, there's certain people online, on Twitter, who publicly share that they're pedophiles. And I still can't get my head around that. Or they don't say I am a pedophile, but you read all their tweets and they're disgusting. Like I can't, but I suppose because they're not. Is that Alexander that's gone?
Mm.
Yeah.
I want to make sure he's okay.
I'll do that, Daniel. You carry on.
You do that. Just want to check for everyone else that we're still cool discussing this. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Just because I get that it's. Me and Christina reached a point where we were like, at what point? We've done this with a few things that we've researched. We were like, at what point have we researched enough to have an opinion? Because otherwise, you're just researching.
To be fair, that's the Fall of the Cabal. That documentary took it to a whole nother level for me. It was like it pieced together things that I'd heard from different sources, but I wouldn't say that I have been fully aware of all this information for a long time.
Yeah, correct.
It was like that kind of like pulled so many strings together, and it was like, holy shit, this is really disturbing. And I think because it's so prevalent in the with big names, do you know what I mean? Like people that we trust, people that you see, people that you, like, and I think it's important to just say that we've got no idea who's necessarily involved with this. There's loads of allegations that are going out, and people are putting lists together and claiming that this is who's doing this and this is who's being arrested and all that kind of stuff. And it's all very speculative at the moment. But from what can be gained or what can be gleaned, this is very high profile people, and a lot of it is high level politicians, high level celebrities, high level people that you would know, like, and trust, that have been put in these like idolized almost positions, and yeah, there's definitely, well, I say definitely, there certainly appears to be something very dark and sinister going on underneath it all. Yeah, it's just so disturbing that you just can't even get your head around it. And I think that's how it goes on, or has gone on for such a long time, is because who would ever want to even if you had suspicions, you could never speak it because it's so disturbing. Then how could you possibly, unless you were 100% sure, how could you possibly make allegations like that?
And I want to, if you don't mind me saying now, because you've reminded me of something, Christina, the word conspiracy theory was coined by the CIA. So there's documented proof of this that is released. And what they found was that this is going back to Project Bluebird. This is in the 50s, when we had a massive spike, basically after during World War II and post right afterwards. We had a huge spike in the number of people flying saucers over Washington. We had a huge spike in the number of people that claimed to see flying saucers. And the American government did not like that at all. So they created something called Project Bluebird. And I'm just going to share with you an image. Share screen. And something like this happened. This was in 1952. And there was a night when loads of flying saucers flew over Washington, and they were going all over the place. You know, this isn't just random dots that appeared. These were zipping and flying. And in another conversation, we'll discuss that this was apparently a threat to America to do something in particular. But as a result of the volume of people that claim to have seen UFOs, the American government said to people, look, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll put a task force together and we'll go and investigate it. Now, the people that were on Project Bluebird, some of them have gone on record now to say quite categorically that whenever they found a report, sorry, we removed my quote marks, whenever they found a report, and it was quite easy to say that the report was refractions from the sun on a weather balloon, then they would tell the public as a way to say, look, it's just something stupid. And whenever there was a report and it was quite clearly a UFO, they couldn't dispel it easily. They would just ignore it and bury it. And their argument was that if we make enough noise over here to say why it's stupid and crazy, and we ignore the ones that are quite clearly crazy, and then we remove the doctorals and the accreditations from people who are at high level. So if you're a doctor and you say you saw a UFO, they go and threaten them and say, look, it wasn't. And if you keep saying it, we're going to take your doctorate away. So what they did over a period of a year was everyone who had any position of power, they were able to shut them up. And that was just left with the hillbilly farmers who nobody believed anyway. So then they dispelled a lot of stuff that just made it kind of like something over here. You know, it was a provable thing. And then the other ones they ignored. And then they started saying that people were conspiracy theories and calling them crazy. And they produced a narrative so that nobody wanted to be associated with conspiracy theories. So this was a paid for, created way to make people not want to be considered a conspiracy theory. And that still appears today. You'll meet people who are just like, if you talk to them about something that's not mainstream and it's anything to do with, well, anything that a newspaper would say is something that can be debunked, then they'll say you're just a conspiracy theory. And it's this label we throw out there. And with everything that Christina was sharing then, this whole thing we're talking about is so crazy that it can kind of be done. That if someone like what Richard shared, the Corey thing, it's one of these things that you would think, well, if that was true and someone went to the police station and said something, you'd think that would be completely investigated and be massive. But because what we're discussing is so big and involves such high levels of everybody, that it's almost beyond comprehension that it could even be a thing. But the reality is because there's such a strong narrative of conspiracy theory, that if you believe this is a conspiracy theory, that it's in a way, it's very easy for them to get away with certain things. And it's very difficult for someone to whistleblow on it because of fear of death. I mean, you look at the number of people that have whistleblown that are dead now from suicide, being hit by a bus. I think the Corey one, he got pneumonia. Is that right? The one you sent, Richard? I read the article and it said something about him getting pneumonia. Yeah. So there's just, people are silenced in so many ways that I think is really difficult to come out. But there are certain actors, Mel Gibson, Elijah Wood, there's one, the kid out of
Harry Potter.
Which one?
The lad from Harry Potter as well, is he?
Daniel Radcliffe.
Oh, has he come out and said stuff?
I don't know, but he's the Harry Potter kid, isn't he?
Well, I'm thinking of the guy that's out of
Harry Potter's a British
what's
movie.
What's the vampire film with Lost Boys?
Oh, right. Okay.
Oh.
He's one of the two kids who are researching the magazines of them.
Phoenix Joaquin.
Yes, it's Phoenix Joaquin's brother.
Yeah, River Phoenix. Yeah.
River Phoenix. Yeah.
Yeah. Who died?
Who died? I know. So there's just, when you start to look at it, because the thing is, there's very few facts. It's very hard to get facts, but there's so much smoke. And anyone that's looked at any of the 9/11 stuff, this was a big turning point for me. Me and Christina reached a stage where we were like, you know what? Let's say that some of this is bullshit. Let's just say that 50% of all of this information is not true. You only need one or two pieces of information to be true for the whole thing to stink. I mean, any fact only, or any story that's considered truth only stands up if every single piece of information is corroborated as true. If I tell you a story from A to Z and it involves all these points, if all of a sudden someone proves that B is false, then the whole story has to be brought up into question. And we looked at the whole 9/11 stuff and we're like, you know what? There's so much stuff in here that even if we just pick 3 or 4 random pieces of information that we feel is the most strongest, and there's certain ones in that are really strong, the whole thing stinks. So this whole thing that Out of the Shadows is talking about, and the Fall of the Cabal video, when you take a step back and you look at these pieces of information that are coming together now, and the people that are coming out and speaking publicly, and this whole thing with, when you start linking it with Q and with Trump and everything, it paints a very, I would say, interesting, like compelling picture. It paints something that really starts to just open eyes. And we've never, I'll be honest, this is the first time I've ever done any sort of call where I've openly said to people, I want to discuss this. And I want to discuss it because I feel that I'm calm enough. I feel that I'm cool if someone can give me some compelling reasons why not. But like Oliver said earlier, like he learned about this when he was at art college, but never did anything with it. Same for us. Me and Christina have been looking at this for, let's just say 10 years, yeah? Not this in particular, but this whole concept of something's going on. And there's a thing that is talked about in crypto with this massive transfer of wealth. And Dan Penn says it all the time. Dan Penn says this is the greatest transformation of wealth in history. And he said, what are you going to say to your grandkids in 10 years when they say, what were you doing, granddaddy? What were you doing? And he says, sat on your fat ass. That's what you were doing nothing. And he says it really aggressively, as Dan Penn does. But it's that same idea. It's like, at what point do you know enough information to be brave enough to have some sort of an opinion that's not just, I wear tinfoil hats and I believe in all conspiracies, because there's some really crazy stuff out there and I don't believe it, but I don't dispel it. I'm not in that camp yet. 5G is one of them, by the way, just so you know where I stand. Like I'm not there, and I will look at as much stuff as I can, but I'm not pro 5G either. But at what point do you look at enough stuff to go, okay, do you know what? Something's going on, and I'm all for love and light, and I'm all for meditation, and I'm all for bringing in positivity into the world. But if you've got a broken arm or a cut, you need to put some cream on it. I need to know I have a cut to heal it. Otherwise, I'm just doing that. I'm going, everything's okay, everything's okay, everything's okay. And someone says, why is your arm green? Don't focus on that. We're just going to, everything's okay. And And this is one of those topics. And I don't want to say to my kids or grandkids at some point, when all this comes out, that I knew about it and did nothing. Like, when I think about that, I think I don't want that. But I'll tell you what, it scares me to talk about it. It does, especially when I see all of these YouTube channels being deleted fast. I found out last night that Facebook is going to, what's the word? Not vilify, but warn you if you comment or like or share what Facebook deems fake news. That's really worrying. YouTube's already doing it now, and people have already proved that YouTube is just removing views and likes from videos. So people have got screenshots of videos and it'll say, well, 100,000 views. You go on it the next day, it says 6,000 views. So YouTube's actually lowering them so that you as a viewer think no one's watching that video. And you've really got to start to ask the question, like, why is that being done? And at what point does that start to impact me? And how long has it been going on for? And what is it they're trying to control that narrative of? So I'm going to pause there because I want an open conversation, but I really just wanted to share that. So I want to discuss things openly. I want to use critical thinking. There's a lot of information that is searchable, and there's a lot of dots that can be connected. And I want to start to be able to discuss this and get other people's views as well, and ultimately find out, okay, so safely, what can we, whoever, do? Would anybody like to comment?
In answer to that question, what we can do is what you're doing now, which is being brave enough to be open, because that's, I feel, the hardest thing. There must be so many people coming across this information who do not dare to broach the subject with even close friends, colleagues, real people in real life, let alone bring it into the public gaze. And there has to reach a critical mass of people who are aware, who are able to look at the information, and who are eventually able to come to the point where they have enough information to say something is going on and actually believe it. Because that's, I think, the hardest part for people is the disbelief, because it's so outrageous. But it can happen if the critical mass is reached, and the critical mass is reached by a technique called flooding the zone. So if you've seen Event 201, you know about that. So Amazing Polly has a video about Event 201 called Viral Marketing, which explains how Event 201 was explaining how they would market the narrative and keep charge of the narrative around the virus. And the phrase they used was flooding the zone. So you are taking charge of all information outlets, Facebook, Google, YouTube, etc., and mainstream, and you are flooding the zone with the on message. You know, Tony Blair used to talk about being on message. So the zone is flooded with that information. Now, the only way to counter that, so the narrative would be everyone's a conspiracy theorist, this kind of thing doesn't exist. Whereas if enough of the regular people are brave enough to talk about it, even at the risk of being banned, shadow banned, losing jobs, positions, credibility, whatever, being ridiculed, if enough people come forward with it so that it is spoken about openly, then I think a critical mass is reached and we can flood the zone in reverse, coming from the bottom up rather than the top down.
I massively agree with that. And I think the only reason I want to stop you there is because I think more people would be cool with it if what it is they're sharing has been thought about gone through some form of a rational filter to have made some sense of it, so that each person at their own time can say, I'm quite comfortable that what I'm sharing isn't a conspiracy theory. Like, it's moving some. I am happy to talk to people quite openly about 9/11. I have sat, thought about it, I've researched bits, I've taken key elements that for me logically don't make sense, scientifically don't make sense. And then there's experts around the world who that's their job, who all of them agree the same narrative. And I look at that and I'm like, that's enough for me to hang my hat on. I don't talk about all the stuff that can be refuted. I'm not bothered about that, because I'm not saying that that's true. I'm just picking some key points, because that's my way of making sense, to the point that with conviction, I can say, well, this doesn't make sense. It doesn't answer the question who was in the plane, even if there was a plane or anything, but it just says that what we're told isn't what happened. And that's what I kind of want to get to with this. And it's this open question now to everybody that has seen, at the very least, Out of the Shadows, let alone if you're saying Follow the Cabal, that's the next level, definitely. But it's like, you don't have to answer this, but does anybody absolutely agree that they're happy to say I agree? Or does anybody absolutely disagree? And it's cool if you're on the fence, there's nothing wrong with that. But because unless, like, if we all agreed, let's just say, then, well, you could argue that we're not all needed, because it's good to have a dialogue to kind of go, well, I totally disagree. Brilliant. Why? What is it that you absolutely inherently disagree on? Is it just because my brain just can't accept it? It's too wild. Or is it because I've consciously thought about it and I disagree with this information? And that's the sort of thing I want to do, because all of us, whatever the conspiracy is, whether it's economic, whether it's about China, whether it's about QAnon, you name it, like, the world is a crazy place right now. And I don't believe anything now. I look at everything as objectively as I can. I think there's a lot of biases going on. And my current view of this, after looking at enough stuff and looking at enough things, looking into all the Tom Hanks stuff, if you haven't looked into that, man, that's bonkers. And I can't substantiate what I see. It doesn't make sense, other than it's all linked with the paedophile stuff. And I'm trying to make sure I'm not coming from a bias. I'm trying to make sure I'm looking at this going, okay, well, let's say he's not. Let's say that he's just normal Tom Hanks that you grew up with, that I've seen in a million films. Well, then the structure of everything that he's releasing through his Twitter channel doesn't make sense. So that's the conversation I want to have first, I think. And I only realized that after you spoke, Alan, and it's this idea that first we make sense. First we challenge each other and find out, is this real? I don't just want to hear a conspiracy and go, yeah, brilliant, that's true. Because that's what a lot of conspiracy people do, is they hear something that supports their notion that the world's evil and that there's an elite controlling people, and 5G's got to be bad because the government brought it in. It's got to be bad. And all it does is it self-perpetuates this industry of people who everyone just thinks crazy. And instead, I want to come at it from rational thinking and really unpack something to go, what shows that this is true? What shows this is not true? So does anybody absolutely agree or absolutely disagree at this stage that they would like to share?
I agree that starting with facts that we can verify, that we are certain of, that there is evidence of, in a similar way to the declassified things. So, for example, Corey Feldman spoke to police in 1994 when he was being interviewed because they were trying to get dirt on Michael Jackson, who Corey said did nothing, and in fact was quite the opposite with him. And Corey said, but he did nothing, Michael did nothing, but these people did something, and here are the names, and this is what they did. And that is documented. Police have records of that, and the police were not interested. They did not want to know. They only wanted to go after the person who he said did nothing. And that is something that can be documented. That's just one piece of evidence. But I think always beginning, as you can with 9/11, with the parts that can be documented, that can be verified. And then what you've got is like a 1,000-piece jigsaw, and you've got 500 pieces, and yeah, you've got missing pieces. But if you step back, you can actually start to see
some sort of a picture. Okay, cool. Anyone else want to put their current views in?
I think I'm my personality is kind of harvest of information. I kind of just harvest information, just want more and more knowledge, because I think for me, I don't remember things without context and kind of depth and structure behind them. So like people's names, I never remember that. But you know, if there's scenarios or physics or science that I can actually kind of understand the backing to everything, then I find that much more easy to recall. And that's kind of naturally where I want to kind of find myself, where I've got all the information I can possibly get. And I think I share your what you and Christina, you referenced you and Christina had, where you actually find yourself kind of not actually necessarily getting to a point of decision or forming your own view. And I find myself in that position quite often, where I'm kind of just want more and more content, want more and more information, and actually are not necessarily getting to a point where I'm actually saying I agree. And I think that's because I'm my personality. But I just think there is just so much information. There's so much content. It is, as you reference, and many people do, it is just a rabbit warren. You just find yourself moving down one thing. Looking at the Q key, the map that was made, and all that is just, it's just crazy to try and get your head around. You could spend years and years just looking into it, but I think I liked what you referenced before, and I think I felt it myself, which is where there is so much there that if you only took a fraction of it, even if it was a quarter of it, and you believe that is probable or likely to be authentic, then there's enough there of significance to actually make you think, well, actually that's significant enough for me to continue looking. I think in Daniel Smattenberger's, I think it was the first one he did on sense making, once he contextualizes the logic of narrative, and he talks about religion and how different religions have progressed. So people like the Jade religion is very kind of passive. It doesn't necessarily promote pushing of their religious views on others, the narratives, and there's like sections and kind of, you could call dogma or kind of rules within religions that encourage you to promote it and continue to think it. And once you realize that's in so many people's interests, whether you're talking about religion, you're talking about government, you're talking about business, you're talking about society as a whole, families, communities, you start to realize that narrative is so strong, and there's so much sense to having that narrative, that you very quickly realize that actually it does make total sense that this kind of thing would happen. And so, for me, I think my struggle would probably be to believe in things quicker than I should. And I think that is, but also, or not make a decision at all, just kind of like allow myself to believe it. But
I would say that, like this, even if it takes you a while to come to a space where you have a decision, that's probably, if I had to pick, a healthier viewpoint in this current time than having the disposition that just gets to that position really quickly, because there's just a lot of noise out there. But I definitely want to promote, and we promote this when we teach Human 5.0, is getting to the space where you have an opinion. So many of us either repeat other people's opinions because they're accepted, or choose to not have an opinion because they're fearful of what others may say or do. And that's mainly because we're not well versed in conversation. I'm not well versed at saying, Richard, you really upset me yesterday. I'd love to discuss it. And Richard saying, okay, I'm really sorry for that. Let's talk about it. Like most people, especially when you go online, I read comments sometimes. I just think, what's happened to a part of the world? There's just, and it's no wonder people are scared of speaking out. Plus, and this has been documented, the number of CIA and other organizations, operatives, whose whole role it is to be online and troll people and comment, and they'll run 10 to 50 profiles per person so that they can, just like Alan talks about flooding the market, someone can make a video, a load of people comment positively about it, let's say, but then if a load of people come in and say this is bull crap and this, that, and that, and then people comment on that to agree, all of a sudden as a new person coming in, you look at the comments and you think, oh, well, generally everyone thinks this is fake, so I don't want to say that this is true. So I think that it would be good then, or I would like to suggest that.
I think I'd like to just say something, but just to follow on from what you were saying then, I think it's very positive to push yourself to make a decision on how you feel or form an opinion. And I think that moving on to Alan's comment, I think it's also quite important to make a decision on action you want to take. And I think almost like the decision could be a decision of no action at all, but also the logic of just making no decision on whether you take an action is almost like a decision in itself. So, you know, for me, I have a position now where I think, you know, should I be acting on this new knowledge? Should I be talking to people like yourselves, or should I be putting it out there and talking to other people? Should I be doing more than that? And you know, there's also that level of where you think, well, should I take an action? Which is almost, you know, I'm quite comfortable. I've only been interested in this stuff, as I say, only for a few weeks. So, you know, but I think you then have to get to that point where you actually decide, you know, what do you do about it? Do you allow it just to be? Because I think it's so easy to allow yourself to be in that position of no action. And that action could be just talking to one person, or that action could be starting a YouTube channel. That action could be taking, you know, steps on from that. But, you know, the people that I talk to, you know, if I talk to, I don't know, my auntie and uncle about 9/11 being, you know, they can't be asked with it. They're not interested in talking about it. And you know, they may well have a view that it probably is, but they also, they don't want to have to bother with it. They want to just carry on with their lives, not thinking and not kind of, it doesn't matter to them. And, you know, or, you know, the Gulf War, or, you know, Vietnam War, that it doesn't affect them enough. But, you know, eating meat, you know, people aren't affected enough to make a decision whether, you know, it's actually a bad thing to kill an animal, or is it something that's actually, you know, well, I just don't really want to think about it.
This is the difference in people asking. This is the difference in people asking, though, and you telling. And I wanted to pick this out of the Shadows documentary because I felt that it was well done enough that it didn't look like someone just kind of scripted together in the back room, and it's not too deep, but it's deep enough to open up the conversation. I'm curious, like Richard or Elaine or Alexander, if you've got any just thoughts at this stage. Like, I'm not going anywhere with this. I just want to open it up because I think I'm just looking for sense making. I'm just looking to share it with other people and to just begin a conversation, because I am very interested in what's going on in the world, and this is going on in the world, and I really think it's all linked. There is no surprise. All the Donald Trump stuff, the Q stuff, the blockchain's coming out, that money's collapsing, that money's being printed, that there's a biggest thing in the world about to get crumbled down, that all this is happening right now is not a coincidence in my world.
I personally think, I think like you said, Oliver, I think everyone has some degree of intuition that there's something else going on, that there's a level of elitism in the world that we're not party to, or that's going to control different aspects of life. And like, you know, I'll always come from the point of view of I'll try and create that Venn diagram from different areas, whether it's economic, geopolitical, this sort of level of elitism now. I think everyone's got that fundamental intuition that something is true. You know, so in terms of your question there is, do we agree? I think fundamentally, yes. The difficulty from a, you know, your own psychological point of view is like you say, from a point of view of trying to share it with someone else, it is quite difficult because of the narrative around conspiracy theories and all of that. And you know, going down that route can be quite challenging. And I think the fundamental issue I find as well is that where we are at the moment is we're all at this point where we can spend more time looking at this stuff, and something is happening energetically in the world that's raising the awareness of everyone, and everyone's having these conversations. So information is leaking out. So, you know, it's all still quite new to me, but fundamentally, I do, you know, that there's a kernel of truth in everything.
Yeah.
I don't know if everyone's seen that article that's been doing the rounds about gaslight, you know, the gaslighting one that's on Medium. Anyone seen that? And sort of this sort of narrative that's gaslighting. It's basically, right, let's start the wheel. It's what Trump's doing now, which is basically starting the wheels turning to get everyone thinking about buying again. You know, I'll try and dig it out and share it. It's a very good article. And, you know, the momentary pause that we all sort of find ourselves in this lockdown situation at the moment, I suppose I worry now that you sort of are more aware of these sort of things, that some people just want to go back and they want a McDonald's and they want a KFC and all that kind of stuff, right? And they just want it to go back to normal, get back their jobs. But now we know this sort of stuff. Now we've got this kind of awareness. We've got this kind of lockdown mentality where we're looking at things and looking at life in a simpler way. How do we go back to what's normal after this, right? And it's the same with these theories, these awareness, the sort of uncovering of all these different potential, you know, nefarious elite actions and elitism actions. It's like, once you know these sort of things, how can you sort of go back? So in terms of poking at the, you know, the different areas of it, I think the way I approach it is I try and find narrative from a different area that crosses over. You know, so I can't, because otherwise you do just go down that massive rabbit hole, which is, let's just take the paedophilia one. You just go down that one, you go down that one, and if you're not careful, the algorithm is just going to keep showing you what you want to see, what you want to see.
Yeah.
You know, you're just absorbing that information, and so, you know, you've got to be quite clever about how you absorb the information, and that's why Daniel Schmachtenberger is good, isn't it? Because he takes that bit of information, that bit of information, so here's the delta between those two things, and this is what we need to discuss. It's not that, it's the gap between, right? So, you know, and that's the approach I kind of take. I don't do the, you know, sort of super deep dive and trying to get hold of document A from here and all those sort of things, but I think I'm not at that level yet.
Well, I think we all play to our strengths. Like I definitely have a part of me. Like today, I've been researching one of the parapsychology research studies, which is 9,000 studies, and reading scientific papers, because for our program, when we show an experiment, I want to make sure that Daniel Schmachtenberger taught me this. I used to just read the journal, and I'd read a journal summary, and I was like, you know what, where's the data? And I'll go back and I'll look at the data. Okay, who's critiqued the data? These people, what did they say? And I do a rounded view, and it takes me hours, but I reach a stage where afterwards, and I quite enjoy it in some weird, sick way, and I reach a stage afterwards where I'm really comfortable knowing I've checked that to level 7, whatever level 7 is, yeah? But it's substantially more than an average. Someone else would say, well, I read this meme and it says that people have parapsychology. So with what you just said there, Richard, like, I think it's a mixture, because I definitely want to check. I'll just cherry pick certain things that I'm like, okay, that's interesting. Me and Oliver have had a few conversations about the woman. If you choose to watch the Fall of the Cabal video, and we will share the links. I won't put them in. I'll share them privately, because I don't just want to put them in that group. Got cat hairs on me. But you check some of the things that she says, and they're not true. She hasn't delved lower than surface level. It does not make the stuff that she's sharing false. But I think some things need cherry picking. If you're comfortable with that, I'm definitely comfortable with that. So just check them. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And then some of the rest of the other stuff, like you said, is okay. What's the context of this? What's the context of the opposite? Where's that crossover in the middle? How, where's the delta? And the fact that we have look, this whole situation we are in globally is it's perfectly, weirdly perfect and interesting. And we have all this time that people are talking about this stuff. Thanks for that link. I just found it. I wasn't sure if that was the right one, so I will read that afterwards. Because there's also a conversation here, and I've had this conversation with Alexander, which is sometimes, what are you going to do about it? Because I can't stop Hollywood people capturing kids and doing stuff with adrenochrome. But what I do know is this. Once you've had a red pill, and there's multiple red pills, once that door is open, it cannot close at all. Yeah. The fact that we're having this conversation now, which is a very first for me, absolutely. But I feel quite comfortable having it. This conversation we're having right now will completely change some future conversation we have. Whether it's us, whether it's different people. It's like, I imagine, I've got friends who are gay, and I can imagine the first time they say I'm gay, vocally to somebody, must be huge. But every time after that becomes easier. And so I would love to go on Facebook at some point and just share, hey guys, I've seen this. It's interesting. I'm not attached to it. I'm not saying it's true. I'm not saying it's not true, but I've checked a few things. It's interesting. You look at some of the stuff that Mel Gibson has gone on the record to say about Hollywood. That's interesting. He said that. You look at the stuff Elijah Wood said. He said that. There's things that are said that are interesting. And so it starts to weave together, because I don't actually think the conversation is about Hollywood or about adrenochrome or anything. I think the conversation is about the fact that, because someone could say, well, that's got nothing to do with me, and I'm not bothered about the kids. Let's just say that they said that. That's true. But it feeds into this bigger picture that ultimately the media is involved somewhere, and ultimately there is a narrative that we are fed. And it's making sure that enough people are aware to make sure that this narrative doesn't continue to control us, because some of the information I've seen around the UK moving towards a police state is worrying. And Daniel Schmachtenberger talks about that. The fact that some people in the UK are grassing up and calling the police on people who are having people round. Like, obviously there's people that take the piss and they're having parties and stuff, and I get that, but it's become completely okay and normal for certain people now to call the local police to say that I know someone who is breaking the social distancing rule. And they're normalizing control by the police. And now that's got nothing to do with Hollywood people being pedophiles, but it's all linked. It's like, I don't think we can isolate any one of these conspiracies. You can't, because they're all intertwined in one way or another. And I think, and I'm only saying what I'm saying now as I'm kind of piecing together these words and these thoughts in my head, because I don't necessarily want to be a person that goes out there and breaks this pedophile thing to people on Facebook and be like, guys, we've all got to do something about this. This is an outrage. For me, this is no more of an outrage than being lied to for thousands of years, having finance and money controlled, having central banks. They're all terrible. And they say the greatest form of slavery is a slave who thinks he's free. And most people have got no idea how not free we are at all. Got no idea. And money likes money. And recently, since entrepreneur became a thing, we're talking about money. But I'll tell you now, my mum, who's on this call, wasn't taught bull crap about money, I'm going to guess. No. And I know this from hearing Christina's parents talking about it and my mum's parents. Like, if you were in finance and banking, you almost feared and revered the bank manager. They had that status, yeah. And so many people are we just work for paycheck, and then personal development came about, and it was like, oh, there's more that you can actually like break out of that mold. And for a long time, unless you were an entrepreneur and you broke out of it, everyone else just carries on doing the same stuff. And there's a whole shift right now in humanity and in consciousness and in awareness of where science and spirituality are meeting. Financial literacy is completely changing, education's changing, and people understanding that even the way that we're teaching, all of these things are independent, but they're, as Alan talked about, this piece of the jigsaw, they're different pieces of the jigsaw, and actually when you start putting together, it's one big picture. And I think what I want to do is find a way to remove the stigma from it being a conspiracy, to be able to talk about these things that are happening that have got a decent amount of, I don't want to say fact, a decent amount of stuff that's very sticky, meaning, you know, you can't just brush it away. And if someone says, oh, that's just conspiracy, I'm sorry, that's not an argument. That is the non-argument. It's like when someone says, well, statistically, that's possible. Look, statistically, anything's possible. The statistics doesn't make something an argument either. And I want to start to bring that together, because the sooner, I don't want to wake up in a world where all of a sudden I am surrounded by people who think if it's not in the paper, it must be false, and who have handed over all of their rights and privacy to a government who historically, one could argue, has not always had the people's best interests at heart. That is a world I don't want to wake up in. And I don't think we're going to, but I do think we need to have more conversations like this to feel, each of us, to feel more comfortable that if you are in a situation where this conversation comes up, that you can talk about it with calmness, with self-energy, and be able to rationally respond to people.
Can I say something? So, because I completely hold the view that we are working towards a higher way of being. And I completely agree with you, Richard. I think that something is happening very profound energetically with the planet right now. And we are going through an awakening, unlike anything we've ever seen before. People are waking up, and energetically we're shifting our vibration. I really feel that. But a part of that is us stepping in as conscious agents. And a part of that is us following our intuition. And all I know is that for a good couple of days this week, I've been in my meditation. I've come out of my morning meditation in rage. It's not a complete opposite effect of calming me down, because I've just had this voice inside of me that's like, you know, this information, what are you going to do about it? I do not want to be there in 40, 50 years turning around to my children, grandchildren, and saying, you know, when they go, oh, wow, so grandma, you were there when all of this happened. What did you do? And me to go, oh, I was too much of a coward to be able to actually say something, was kind of like the feeling that I was getting inside of me. And I don't know what to do with that, because speaking about it does frighten me. It does, because of the backlash, and because of I have spoken. I was speaking to Ollie and Julia about this. I have spoken out before, and being completely wiped out around 9/11 and the pharmaceutical industry and all sorts. I've spoken about all of this corruption that the world is facing over the years, and been totally shut down. And that hurts a part of me, like that does. It kind of kicks a vulnerable part of me. But I was overjoyed when Daniel said that he'd kind of just had so happened. I think it was that day when I shared with him that I just, you know, that I was really feeling it in my meditations when I was going within, that I needed to do something more. So, which is why I've jumped on this call, because it's just opening up these conversations with people we wouldn't normally have these conversations with. And just the time's coming. I really feel that all of this needs to end. And I don't think there is a possibility or probability that we can go back to the way that it was before. And why would we want to? We're at this juncture now that we know inherently that something is very, very wrong on this planet. Like even my parents, who are straight-laced and daily mail readers as you can have, but when I was speaking to them about the corona, and they were like, no, definitely, like we're thinking like there's something going on here that's not right, because you look at it, nothing makes sense. Nothing makes sense. But what I think is really important, and Schmachtenberger touches on this, is when you're dealing with topics like this, you know, that are very emotional, you know, we can really feel the energies rising within us when we're talking about it. And documentary makers fall foul of this, of getting so emotive about an idea that they allow their sense making to drop, because they're not going for the facts. They're going to make a point. And that's something that I'm really trying to consciously, but I don't necessarily have the profile or the skill or the patience to really delve in deep to some of this research. So I find that I look and I take a documentary, for the Cabal as an example, and I take it as verbatim, and it's like, okay, well, that's interesting. Or I used to, not so much anymore, but I used to kind of take it as truth. And then I realized that actually sometimes they actually lie. These documentary makers will tell falsehoods, not because necessarily they're bad people, maybe they are, I don't know, but because they want to make their point. So it's just, we are in these really testing times. And
maybe they're just nuts.
that sensible sense making is a huge topic of conversation for us to really talk about. How do we sense check?
Yeah, can I just make a little point regarding what you said about, you know, grandchildren might say, what did you do, that kind of thing. It's something that was asked when all the Jimmy Savile stuff came to light, and loads of people sort of alluded to the fact that they knew something, or they had heard something, but they didn't feel that they'd heard enough to come out and say it. I mean, one or two did, like the guy from the Sex Pistols, Johnny Rotten. I think David Baddiel said something on the Baddiel and Skinner show. So one or two little things, but the vast majority said absolutely nothing and did absolutely nothing. Although they later alluded to the fact that it was sort of common unspoken knowledge. So at what point do we stay silent, and at what point do we say we've got enough? And then there is a real skill, I feel, engaging who you can say what to and how you say it, because everybody that we speak to is at a different level of knowledge and a completely different level of receptivity, and a different level of brainwashing and unbrainwashing by the mass media and the internet and all the rest of it. So we're all at such different levels, and can we have the courage to bring forward a topic, even if we're not certain all the facts are right, just like Daniel said, you know, here's something, this is interesting, I think you might want to have a look at it. And how do we do this very, very skillfully, so we're not making outrageous claims that we can't back up, so we're not slandering anybody, but we are presenting what we know to people in a way that they are ready to receive, not in a way that just makes people shut down, because that's very easy to do. And I've done it on benign topics like nutrition, things like that.
Yeah, no, I understand that. There's, and somewhere in all this, and I'm going to bring it to a wrap soon, but somewhere in all this is vulnerability, because at some point, when you broach a subject, when you choose to do that, when someone asks a question, and I generally work on lead moments, or Alexander has a couple of friends, and they were actually wanting to ask, can we discuss a couple of topics, and just openly discussing them. So that's easy to do, but at some point when you're sharing something, there's going to be an element of vulnerability, because I think you only get any real change or anything when you're willing to be vulnerable and willing to take a couple of battle hits. So So I think with all of this, just give me a moment. I think I would like to have another conversation with some more things brought into the mix, because it's good for me if people are cool with that. It's good. It's not practice, but it's a ground to. Even this conversation here is there's 7 people who have, well, apart from me and Christina, we talk about it. So there's 6 of us here who have never openly in a group discussed this stuff with calmness, with everything, just as it is. And that's actually quite a big step. And you could know other people who are interested but are scared. So to be allowed into a space where none of us, I would like that none of us are pushing any agenda at any single point. Someone can bring something in. It's got to begin with sense making. It's got to begin with some calmness and looking at things. Because there's a few certain facts that are presented that I'm currently investigating that I just want to do my own checking on, like some of the court cases, like the whole, what's she called, that girl at Smallville, Ali Mack.
Yeah, Alison Mack.
Alison Mack, yeah. Like the stuff that she's been taken down for is factual stuff. Like she's involved in massive trafficking. It's trafficking women, yeah. Like, and she's linked with a lot of stuff. And thank you for mentioning Savile. I totally forgot about him. And that's probably when a lot of this all kicked off. Prior to Savile, we didn't have. That was the big.
There was a Sheffield. There was a Sheffield.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to find. Actually, there's a UK police officer who was involved in the Rochdale and the Sheffield sex rings. He has now been forced out, and he is now a massive whistleblower. And he said the deeper he got, he reached a point where the chief of police of England, someone really high up, basically said, "Stop digging." And it goes that high. And I said to Christina the other day that if I was an elite in the 1800s or whenever, and I've been involved in running, my whole family's been involved in countries and everything like that, you're at that sort of level, then it makes perfect sense that as the world started to evolve, you would actually remove yourself from the front. You wouldn't be front facing. You'd want to walk down the street and be anonymous, that you would have a structure of control. And it makes perfect sense that if you're going to bring in an authority such as the police, it makes sense that you have some influence over that to make sure that it keeps the people at bay and that you can carry on your activities. Just as once over there, taxis were for the people, not for lords. And eventually the people said, hang on, this isn't fair. If we have to pay taxes, you should pay taxes. And then all the rich people and the lords said, oh, yeah, okay. But then as soon as they did that, that's when trusts got created, foundations got created. And they created law that said, yeah, we'll pay taxes. But they managed to put all that money aside. That's how all of these trusts and foundations and the law behind them came to be, because lords and other people of that level were told to pay taxes, but didn't want to pay what they were meant to pay. So the whole structure of control that's got created, it kind of makes perfect logical sense, because if you are in control, and if there is that elite control around the world, why on earth would you then implement something that is your own downfall? You wouldn't do. You would create a barrier or a level between where you operate and where everyone else operates. So I think having more of these conversations would just begin to just allow more sense making to kind of go around. And making it very clear when we're having a conversation like this versus, I don't know, more around crypto and blockchain and stuff. But at some point, it would be very good. I'm actually picturing a Venn diagram of all of these different theories and conversations that are going on, just to start to see, because they're all happening right now. And that is staggering. Like right now, we're not just talking in the last 10 years, right now, like this last 6 months, everything's at the surface, everything. And then the whole CV19 thing, which, look, everyone disagrees, has its own oddities to it as well. So I would love more conversations like this, and I'd love us all to just start to just bring stuff in, because then if people ask any of you questions, I'd love you all to be able to calmly respond with stuff And I would personally like to reach the stage where I can share something online that's soft, just to start to see. And I once said to somebody, if you're sharing stuff online and nobody hates it, you're not really sharing any opinion. There's got to be some point where it's got to disrupt enough thoughts to find the people that struggle with that backlash, because it's only at that. If we all agree on this call, we're not getting anywhere. In a way, we need some. It's in the, as Daniel Smachtenberger says in the Emergence talk, it's through two opposite entities, two opposite agents coming together, creating a synergistic relationship where you have an emergent property. And the greater the polarity of the agents that come together, the greater the synergy that's created, the greater the synergy, the greater the emergent property. Meaning if two of us come together and we're of the same mind, even if we have synergy, what we create, which is the emergent property, is never going to be as great as if a heavy metal artist and, I don't know, some electronic dance guy come together and they create something that'll be totally different. So it would be really good.
What would be, you know, I think something that might help moving forward is just some light homework. And I think in terms of taking if we Schmachtenberger ourselves, what's that homework going to be, and what's the two polar opposites we can look at to get the two completely different viewpoints, so that we don't become our own echo chamber, because we're all creating our own bias if we're not careful, aren't we? At the moment, I think we're not. I think we're mindful of the fact that we will do it. There's a possibility, but how do we ensure that we don't? You know what I mean? It's like, you know, what is? I think it's being able to find those two polar opposites that one is debunking the other, and then critically appraising it between us. Do you know what I mean?
I like that. And what came to mind then, because at the same time we're all busy, but we're not that busy that we can come on a call like this and seriously be talking about something, and therefore we can't be that busy that we can seriously sense check it. Then my suggestion to just invite everyone would either be that we take a particular subject and try and find reasons why it's completely false, and just see what we come back with. The problem we have is we're talking about something that's so big that when you go and find allegations why the whole Corey thing is stupid, everything comes back to the information you can get, which is mainstream media. And if what we're talking about is true, then all the information that the media portray to say why it's bullcrap is in itself bullcrap. So I'm completely with you, Richard, but I'm already thinking about.
Well, I think then if that is a case in point, if you can't find the information, then it's kind of creating the fact that if there's not any counter information there that you can find, then it is being suppressed in some way, isn't it? I guess. Do you know what I mean? It's like.
But I suppose we've got to try.
Yeah. What information is there? If it, you know, I'm not been aware of this fall of the cabal. Is this like next level up out of the shadows? Is it?
I think you'd be fine to watch it. It's just basically episode 5 is it's pretty intense. But I do think you need to watch the fall of the cabal, because if I'm honest, the Out of the Shadows documentary, and I've seen one report of someone dismissing it, and the reason they dismiss it is there's nothing factual in it. And he's right. Like, it's a very good story. It's very well put together. And the woman, that reporter woman, she's done a lot of work, and so has the director, but they don't show the work. They make the story. And it's the biggest, and they've done that on purpose because it'll just get too lost. So if you watch The Fall of the Cabal, there's serious, you could just pick a nugget and go, right, I'm going to investigate that. So for me, I've started looking into Pizzagate. Yeah. Now he talks about it in Out of the Shadows. It stinks. And I picked that because it's this central thing that keeps coming up, is this Pizzagate thing. And it absolutely stinks. So it could be a really good idea to take the Fall of the Cabal video, watch them. If you feel up for it, watch episode 5. But please do, as Oliver said, please watch it all the way to the end.
Does episode 5 work in isolation, or do you really need to see 1 to 4 to make sense of it?
Yeah, watch them in order till the end. Yeah, watch 1 to 10 all the way through, and then she's done 4 quite interesting ones on COVID-19. If you just search "Fall Cabal," just the 2 words in YouTube, you'll see her whole channel. I think it's like 17 videos.
Hang on, I'm gonna post it now so that you can.
What's her name?
Fall Cabal. FALL Cabal. And there's the YouTube channel. There's like 17 videos. I think she's got the 10. Well, she's got the 9 of the 10.
Is it a lady?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I have seen some of this. Yeah.
There you go. I'm sharing it now, so I'm going to share it into the chat. If everyone just wants to copy it, then you can watch it, and you can watch episode 5 somewhere else. So if you feel up for it, I'd get people to watch that, because there's stuff in there that you can go, do you know what? I'm going to pick that bit and I'm going to research that. And I think then we just begin there, because on the next call, it'd be really good to try and find out. It'd be really good for people to come from a space of saying, I've done some research, because otherwise all we're doing is repeating stuff we've seen, which is where you begin. And that's really good that we begin. We've got to start the conversation somewhere. But then I think maybe we, as Richard said, we'll have a call in a couple of weeks, and I can imagine by then a lot will have come out. We've got no idea. I just want people's opinions, because this subject splits a lot of people. I'm really cautious of not overtaking this Future Leaders group, WhatsApp group, suddenly with lots of this information. It was one of the reasons I made it. I wanted to talk about everything globally, and I'm cool with everything being in one spot. But I just want, especially probably the people that have been there a bit longer, I kind of don't want to make another WhatsApp group, but I want to be able to share some stuff. But I don't want people to be like, well, this isn't something else. I just want people's views, whether you have an opinion on that. Should it be shared in there, gone somewhere else, or doesn't need to happen anyway?
I'm totally happy with it being there. I have no problem with it. And to be honest, as you say, it's an easier space for it. I think the people, or at least I imagine most of the people in that group.
You'd be surprised. I don't.
I mean,
I don't.
I think there's probably people in there that'd be like, what the hell is this now? I thought this was cryptocurrency. And I think that would be reasonable for them to think that. But then the whole creating another group, maybe that's just what needs to happen. But I think I'd have to leave it to you to decide.
Cool. I just wanted opinions. That's all. Richard or Alexander, any views?
I think I don't need another WhatsApp group in my life, if I'm honest. I've got that many of them at the moment.
That's what I was thinking.
I'd say I think people will self-censor, and if they want to be remove themselves, just say that question. So these are the kind of things we're discussing now. It's all linked, but this is the frame of reference for a period of time. Yeah. Remove yourself if you can be part of it, and
I'll chuck my 2 cents in quickly, but Bradley shared one of the videos in the group on another group that I have with a group of friends, and a couple of people on the group just instantly dismissed it and just didn't really care, didn't really want to have interest. And so for the people on that group that do want to know more about cryptocurrency, I think it would be strange for them to then see this stuff. And then they might leave, and then they might not be able to get that information on crypto. So it is a tough one, because I get it. People that want to leave can just leave, but it's also considering what the definition of that group was for people when they joined.
It definitely wasn't crypto. Future Leaders today was around how do we discuss everything going on, and that's why I made a point. It's blockchain, because I think it's going to be everywhere. You can't talk about blockchain without talking about crypto. You can't talk about crypto without talking about the economy. And you can't talk about the economy without talking about geopolitical goings on. And so it was all of those things, really. And when you start talking geopolitical and you're at that top level, you're basically talking about elites and up. And at that point, you're effectively talking about everything. So I'm totally cool with it. And we teach sense making, and we teach calmness over things. So if people are struggling because of their own stuff going on, The group's not necessarily designed to coach people or anything, so they've got their own stuff going on. That's cool. I won't share things like the Follow the Cabal thing, just because it's heavy for some people. The Out of the Shadow stuff, I was cool with. I think I'm just going to make a point of reminding people what the group's about, and that all topics which affect the future of our planet and the future geopolitical stance economically which is where it began, are to be discussed. And I started for the first few calls with blockchain and crypto being massive influences. We've recently had a lot of conversations about China. This whole thing, and the whole CV19 thing brought a lot up. So for me, it's only a logical progression that we talk about something that's topical, that I look at right now and think that has weight to it. Therefore, it's it. If I thought it was complete, you'll notice I haven't really talked about 5G at all, because I just can't. I'm not there with it yet, and I don't want to put it in the group until at least I'm at a stage where I'm cool enough to put it in the group. But this thing I am. So I'll make a point with it. If people want to leave, they can leave. But I also think that the 60, 70, 80 people that are in it, some of them may find the fact that we're talking about it, it might give them comfort, because they could be aware of it and not have a clue who to talk to. So to know they're in a group where people are discussing this could be very beneficial. So I think I will put some context to it. There'll always be blockchainy stuff in there, but I think I'm going to keep it in, but I won't drill it down people's throats, but I'm also not going to avoid it. And I'm definitely not making another WhatsApp group. My WhatsApp's already bonkers enough. So
that sounds good.
I think I'll do that. So thank you everyone for your opinion, and Alexander, I get that. But I don't want to hide. I definitely don't want to hide away from things.
It's just making that context. Why are we discussing this? Because it does create that, the narrative. We've followed this narrative ourselves, haven't we? Do you know what I mean, within the group, and this is where it's ended up. So it makes sense, and it will come back round again, won't it? Do you know what I mean? I think.
Of course it will.
As we start.
And also, like, we're getting some of these calls we're getting on. Like, we can't talk about this without addressing this, and you can't address, like, we need it's fundamental of trading. When you do fundamental analysis, you have a view of the world, and if someone strikes oil in this country, you have a fundamental view that this has a chain link reaction all the way to that now computers in Saudi Arabia cost more money, and you can spot that and you trade it. So we need to have a holistic view of what's going on in the world if we're to make any sense of what's going on in the world. So I'm going to reframe that and make that clear. And
I just say something.
Yeah.
This was the first time on the call, having been in the WhatsApp group for quite a while. I thought it was all about the crypto or the blockchain and stuff like that until this last 7 days. Other things have been appearing. So I think I love it. I mean, I'm on board with all this, but certainly if I thought that it was mainly about the blockchain and crypto and currency like that, then perhaps the other people did, and they may not want to know anything like this. So that was just my point of view.
Cool. That's cool. But then those people, I suppose, if they're really not comfortable with it, because it's going to be a mixture of everything, they can leave if they wish.
Oh yes, but that is part of the reason I've never been on the calls before, because I thought it was all about the money side of things, which not that it doesn't interest me, but that's way beyond me.
Yeah.
Well, you'd be surprised. But go on, Alan. You wanted to? I want to wrap it up.
Yeah, if I could make a suggestion, it's something I mentioned earlier, which is you can save messages. Maybe some people don't know that you can save messages on WhatsApp, so it might be worth just explaining that you can. Because if someone is interested in one topic and not the other, it can become quite difficult to find the relevant messages, because there might be a chain of 30 messages about something else. And so it might be worth saying you can save messages. If you see messages that you're interested in, it's worth saving them, because sometimes it goes off in another direction, and then what you saw earlier is hard to find again. I think that's quite relevant, so people know how to use the group so that it works best for them. So not spending half the day searching through trying to find what it was they were looking for.
Okay. I've got a few ideas what I'm going to do on that, because I've wanted to make a message that every week I just send in, and it reminds people of certain things, context of the group, rules, if we have any rules, and how to use WhatsApp effectively, because most people don't know. So I will do that. And I think ultimately we're just going to see where this goes organically. I can't imagine it staying on WhatsApp for ages anyway. It's got a limit as WhatsApp. But I had my reasons why I started this group. This conversation is in line with it. And ultimately it's that thing of, I don't just want to cater to what everyone else thinks it is. As a leader in that group, I'm like, this is what it's about, and this is the flag. And that's the direction we're generally talking about. If you like that, stay. And if you don't, that's totally cool. You can leave, or you can mute the group and just check in when you want. And it's about sovereignty, and rather than catering to what the masses want. So I think there's enough people that want to discuss what's going on in the world. That includes newspapers and includes tinfoil hats, so that I can be a better human being. And if I can be a facilitator of that, then I'm happy with that, and to do it with the right context. So I really appreciate at the end everyone just sharing that, sharing their views on it. So before we leave, we're just going to do a quick round robin. Let's just say like less than 5 words. How are you feeling? And then we will leave. So we will begin at top left. Alan, you're on first. You don't have to use all 5 words. How are you feeling?
I've been quite emotional. My heart rate's been up. My breathing's been the whole way through, because I've not talked about this kind of stuff in public. So that was a challenge for me. A public thing that goes online. That was a real challenge. I'm pleased that I stepped into that fear. And I'm very pleased that we just exposed this tip of a particular iceberg. And that's probably too many words.
So it's 5-ish. It was 5-ish. Yeah. Cool. Ollie?
I want to know more. I want to know more about loads of stuff. I'm really interested in anyone knows any more about like QAnon, just like basic kind of stuff about what it is, how it was created, how people know it's one person or who it is. Then the 111 countries debt cancellation is something that was really interesting to me. Didn't touch on that today. If any more content about that, be really appreciated. I want to know more.
I want to know more. Okay, 4 words.
Please.
Brilliant. Alexander?
Intrigued.
Perfect. Thank you. Richard?
Yeah, same. I've got a thirst for knowledge, I think, same as Ollie. And but I always have to try and put a lid on the fact that I really want to take some action in this space. I don't know what that action is. That's the thing. Yeah, it's yeah, just keep pulling, just keep having these conversations, I think, at the moment, and keep doing the research, right?
Cool. Thank you very much. Len?
Looking forward to sharing more.
Mine would be happy I did it. Do you want 5 words?
Hey everyone, I got booted off the internet. I feel relieved in a way and motivated. Yeah, just looking forward to doing the research.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I really respect and honour everyone for being open to it. Let's see where it goes. I do think we discuss stuff. Richard, thank you for your contribution around kind of just what are we doing, having some homework. It's up to us all to do our own homework in the sense of just take a step forward. Whatever that step is in your world, do a bit of sense checking. I highly recommend. Oliver, do you mind pulling together the Daniel Schmachtenberger sense makings? What's that mean?
Yes.
Okay, go on. Just joking. That might mean maybe. Pull those together. If you haven't watched them, guys, please do. They're really good. And let's just do some homework, whatever that means for you. I'll schedule a call for a couple of weeks' time, and let's see where we go. All right, that's what we can do. And I'll post some more stuff in the group just to give some context and everything. I appreciate that. And, I appreciate all of you. I really do. All right.
Thanks for hosting, Daniel.
Thanks, Graham.
Cheers, buddy.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, man.
Bye.